Hi, my name is Nolan Hack. I'm a black revolutionary from Los Angeles, California.
I'm Derrick. I'm a writer in Texas.
I'm John Kane. I do a radio show in New York City and on the Seneca Nation territory of Cattaraugus, and I'm a freelance columnist.
Hi, I'm Julia Wallace, activist against police brutality, member of SEIU Local 721, socialist, and yeah, I guess that's all I'll say for now.
I guess I should add, this is John Kane again, that I am Mohawk, so I'm representing a native voice in this conversation.
Indeed.
All right.
As always, the
welcome.
point of the panel that gotta have native voices and black voices learning from each other, proving that the solidarity between our two people is possible. Not only possible, but it is vital for our own liberation. It exists indeed. So the topic tonight is the blackest film in the history of blackness.
I think Blade actually was also an all-black superhero. I've seen some people say that this is like the first black superhero movie, but I haven't seen Blade in so long. It's definitely not the first.
I just mean in terms of everything that went into it. This is the blackest film in Hollywood history. And I mean that with the most positive feeling I could come up with. So we're talking about that movie without spoilers. We're also talking about how even with that movie, Hollywood is still very, very white, very, very white male, and lacking so much color. 95%, almost 95% of screenwriters are white. Since 2012, white screenwriters have actually increased by over 2%. People of color only account for 15% of leading roles in movies. And then you look at television, nearly 95% of scripted shows on digital platforms are made by white people. And you look at cable TV.
Sorry, thank you. You too.
People of color only account for 16% of the leading roles on scripted cable shows.
So basically, white people have been doing a lot of telling of other people's stories and interpreting other people through their own lens.
Indeed. Selma, which was about the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, was directed by a white Englishman.
And even a lot of the roles that are going to that do have like black American or that depict black Americans, a lot of them are going to like English actors. I mean, they are black, but there's even a conversation within like the community here whether or not that's appropriate. I remember that conversation going out with Get Out.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of like suspicious.
I just correct myself. It was written. Selma was written by a white Englishman. Ava DuVernay directed it. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, I don't know. That argument was made by black actors, and like, I'm to be about the black British thing. I'm rather suspicious of that argument because those same people never complained when African Americans played African actors.
Yeah,
right. Don Cheadle was in Hotel Rwanda.
There definitely is a double standard, but if you understand that counter argument, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm suspicious of that being kind of a like, sort of like a U.S. chauvinist kind of argument, like that. Because to me, I want to see more of, I consider myself part of the black diaspora, and I think and that was the other profound thing about Black Panther, is that a lot of the actors and staff and writers and all those people that were involved in it were from different countries of the African diaspora. So, like, I don't know, I recoil at any, like, at U.S. kind of, well, the U.S. black actors need to come first or something like that. I'm a little suspicious of that.
I think that was the most extreme form of the argument, but there is, and there are stats to prove this, that black Americans and immigrant black people, because like white companies know that they can make immigrants do certain things, there does actually tend to be like a preferential treatment given to them in terms of like job education. In fact, Franz, I forget his last name. His last name actually is Franz. He did a study of Black Skin, White Mask, where he goes through and finds that like over time, like after a black immigrant comes to America, after he is seen as more Americanized, his opportunities tend to decline. African immigrants So that conversation was more along those lines. Are we giving? Is us seeing immigrant black people play like black American civil rights leaders? Is that a part of that? And I think it can go either way. I don't personally mind it, and I thought that Get Out was like the wrong movie to put forth as an example for that. But I do think that it's a legitimate conversation, at least in the sense that we do see that phenomena happen.
But then, what about the other direction?
So the other direction would be argued that, like Nollywood is really, really big right now. But generally speaking, like if a movie, if a movie company is going to make a blockbuster film, they're usually either going to have an actor that they want to play the main person already in mind, or the movie doesn't get made. So I think that the other side would be, well, if they've decided that they want this actor, if they want Denzel Washington or Will Smith to play this role, he might either have to play the role or the movie doesn't get made. And because American film doesn't tend to be very internationalized, we're seeing that change now. Up until recently, it wasn't as plausible for someone to go into a major company, pitch a movie idea, and say, hey, I'm going to have this relatively unknown South African person play the main part. Because there's already been conversations about whether black movies sell, like whether people want to go and see movies about black or African heroes. So a movie company in the past, I think, would probably want a person like Will Smith who kind of maybe like bucks that trend, or maybe has the perception at least that he can buck that trend. I think that would be the counter argument.
Isn't Lupita Nyong'o's breakout performance
12 Years a Slave?
Yeah, so that the way she got in was to play a slave.
She did wonderfully. I loved her portrayal in that, and I actually liked her playing that role because I feel like it might have given her an education on the other side of an experience that she obviously did not experience. So I was actually very supportive of her having that role. I thought she did it beautifully.
I'm not denigrating the role. I'm just saying that the way a black woman born in Mexico who happens to be Kenyan breaks into the film industry is in a slave role. That was my.
I mean, she could have done it. I don't know if that's.
Well, I mean, this is one thing I've noticed about our movies, at least, and I and correct me if I'm wrong. John, if I say the wrong thing, I'd say the same thing for Native people, and to a point. The majority of our movies that win awards usually have to do with our oppression in some way, shape, or form. We're experiencing hardship. You look at Malcolm X, Denzel. You look at 12 Years a Slave, Amistad. There's a lot of those. What's the Pursuit of Happiness? Will Smith. it's not something like Up in the Air with George Clooney, where it's a fun rom-com drama where he's a salesman who travels all over the world and gets in a relationship, and it's fun, it's light. That those films, they don't let us have those films most of the time, and when they do, they're not winning awards. The ones that won awards.
There are a few movies that buck that trend. I would say, on the whole, that's right. Whoopi Goldberg wins her Academy Award for Ghost, which is not really anything to do with
that. Yeah,
it happens. There are exceptions that happen, but I would say that, I don't know, I kind of feel like that point is belabored too much. Like, it's just brought up a little bit too much for me, in the sense that most of our history in this country has been tragedy. And tragedy is also one of the more popular forms of cinema and just storytelling in general. Like, to see someone go through something incredibly traumatic and kind of either arise on the other side of that, that's just like a common story trope. So I don't ever, like, I get other people who might say, oh, well, I don't want to see any more slave movies. I get that perspective, but for me, it's like, I don't want to see any more slave movies directed and written by white people. I also don't want to see any more with that one white character where all the white people can pretend like that would have been them in the situation, that has to have like this white savior. I want to see more movies from our perspectives done by us. I don't want to see fewer of our movies on any subject. I want to see more subjects and more things where it can just be like this lighthearted, not even, anything necessarily political at all, but I don't want to see less black anything.
I think
if I could
actually won from Training Day. We didn't win for Malcolm X. Al Pacino.
If I could jump in here as a Native voice, we don't even get played by Native people at all. I mean, you can
hey,
spaghetti westerns.
Last week I asked about Blackstone, and I don't know if anybody's watched that, but I really would like people's opinion about it.
I will. I haven't had a chance to do that. I did go.
Okay, so Blackstone is on Netflix. All Native cast, Native written, Native directed, Native produced. Like it's like the dopest drama, one of the most amazing dramas that I've ever watched. And it takes place in Alberta, Canada, and it's based on people living on a reservation, Blackstone, a fictitious reservation, and whether they should stay there. And, the Canadian Child Services trying to come in and take kids away, and missing Native women, and fracking, and alcoholism. Like, it's all of that. It's really, really, really good. And it is really deep, and, like, the first episode is really, really intense. But, like, that's, like, to me, that was, like, incredible, because it was, like an all-Native controlled project.
Well, and on the Canadian side, they do have the Aboriginal People's TV, APTN television network, and so there is a little bit more effort on that side from a television standpoint. But I will say that part of the reason that it works a little bit more so on the Canadian side, or that it happens, is because we are a little bit more of a higher percentage of the population on the Native side, or on the Canadian side, than on this side. Here, we're only about 0.7 of 1% of the population in the U.S., and it's a couple of percentage points up there on the Canadian side. But I guess historically, what I'm saying, most people can't name a single Native actor, and they certainly couldn't name a single Native director, or screenwriter, any of those things. For many, many years, Hollywood would use makeup to make up a Native person,
Sure.
And to the extent that they put a few Native people in as fillers. But the thing that I'll say, and the reason I think that I was impressed with Black Panther, is that even though they do have one white guy who is on the good side, so to speak, they didn't make him the hero. And invariably, every time there's a film, whether it's Dances with Wolves with Kevin Costner, or or this latest film that's out there. I can't even think of the name of it, but all of these other films, they even the one with the blue people in it there. I don't know. Even that one. That looks like indigenous people. Yeah, Avatar. It's the white guy who becomes one that ends up being the hero. So that didn't happen with Black Panther, and I was glad to see that. Because that's invariably what happens with every film that even has. I mean, even the missing and murdered indigenous women, Mystic River. That's supposed to be about missing and murdered indigenous women. It's got Jeremy Renner, who is the main character, and of course an FBI agent played by a pretty white girl. So even when they do a film that's supposed to be about a native topic, it's still invariably got to have white heroes that save the day.
Damn. Well, but in Black Panther, so there's two white guys actually.
Yeah.
And yeah. One of them is from South Africa, and one of them is from the United States.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the one from the United States works for the fucking... Okay, so I'm saying, and, like, they just kind of gloss that over.
Yeah, I didn't understand the point of that character.
Like, it's just a pass. Like, he just gets a... It's just like, we're not going to talk about what they did to the Black Panther actual organization. We're not going to talk about what they did in other African countries to destabilize them. We're not. That's just the past, and we're not going to talk about. I don't know. I don't really. Who hasn't seen it? Who's on the call? Because like I don't really.
Nolan is the only person
in the world.
The lame who has not.
Are you serious? Because I really want. I was like, I'm gonna go in. Like I can't wait to get in. But okay, fine. No. So anyway, now you know the fucking CIA, and like, it disgusted me. It was incredibly disgusting. Even though he wasn't the center and he wasn't just defended. Like he wasn't the center of the movie. Like he wasn't the, amazing grace white kind of person that you described that they like usually have the plight of black people, and it's centered around even the Henrietta Lacks movie with Oprah. It was not centered around Henrietta. It was centered around a white woman who found out about Henrietta. So that wasn't this movie. But this movie has other propagandistic problems, including the treatment of the CIA.
I was going to piggyback onto that and just say that I feel like narrative arcs like that are like hopes for white absolution, or just that weird black people are just going to forgive them for all the things that they've done, and like they're going to be made like to be one. You're going to be a Black Panther too, or something. I chuckled at that character the entire movie, but it was, I saw that for propaganda. I was glad that they at least boxed the propaganda into like a very tight box, but I didn't like that character.
I didn't even understand the value of that character, really. I mean, because neither the CIA nor anybody, whatever they had him do other than, I don't understand what the value of that character was. The other guy, the South African guy, he is a character from some of the other Marvel films, so he's a continuation of a character that. So I understood where he came from. He was an arms dealer from a previous, Marvel character or Marvel film. But this guy, I didn't understand why he was there.
He was
so that white people will come see a movie,
right?
To soothe white audiences.
And they can see themselves,
white audiences.
So they can be like, I was on the good guys' side. I was on the black people's side. I was revolutionary.
Yeah. All I have to do is save one black person, and I'm good. Now they're going to save me. They didn't save all the black people that went through the transatlantic slave trade.
Right.
They didn't save all the other black people that are all over the world suffering and dying under white supremacy. But this fool, because he saved this other person, now his ass gets to be at the cookout. I mean, almost literally, he's at the cookout. And it infuriated me to no end because, like, oh God, I really want to talk about this movie. The antagonist of the movie represents kind of black diaspora in a lot of ways. And his fury at how he's been treated grew out of the creations of the CIA.
Right.
I mean, when I think of that antagonist, it reminds me of the gang wars. It reminds me of crack being brought into South Central. It reminds me of that, and I lived through that. And my family, well, some of them didn't live through that. And, like, his kind of numbness, it was like that's what happens to people when they've seen too much. They're just numb. And, like, to know that that was created by the CIA, and then in this same fucking movie to have this guy who's the CIA, but he's plucky, you know, and whatever, it just, that actually, besides all the beauty of the movie, it really disgusted me. It really did.
I'm going to try not to spoil anything, Nolan. I'm just going to say that, like, I saw a lot of opinions, like, and I actually had like an exchange with a friend, a white friend, and he was talking about how he saw that character as a villain, and he and I were having a conversation where I was just explaining, like, okay, so this character is like raised in Oakland, he's like pretty much orphaned, and he sees what like this high-tech universe that's like existing in a place on a continent that really needs help. And so I was like, I don't see him as a villain. I see him as a person who was like violating certain norms, and that was unacceptable. Like when he, oh God. I saw most of his transgressions from the lens of, there's this book called The Hero with the African Face, and it talks about this military leader who conquers the Congo, but he finds himself like unable to rule because in the Congo, like the land is believed to like belong to the ancestors. So you have to have like an ancestor that's like in the ground to like actually be considered a legitimate ruler there. And so it wasn't until he was able to win the heart of like a young woman there that he was actually able to be considered a legitimate ruler. Like I've viewed a lot of his transgressions from like the lens of, okay, so you've come back and now you are kind of like violating customs, or you've been so hardened, and like the callousness at which you like approach life has hardened you to the point where you've kind of become what you hate. I viewed the character that way, and so I kind of viewed him more sympathetically, not necessarily as a villain, but it was just very, very interesting to hear how. I'm sorry, Nolan, I didn't mean to spoil anything, but it's just like.
It's a long movie. When I get in the theater, I'm gonna have a big old smile on my face, and I'm smiling to the left and to the right, and like, I'll be fine.
But see, okay, so there's different levels to like this character, and the people who wrote it and directed it are very intelligent. And like thinking about him, I mean, his politics were not villainous, but his actions absolutely were. Yeah. And that's how they set it up. Because if you think about the kind of, you will see, Nolan, it's a kind of ballot versus the bullet, Malcolm versus Martin kind of a situation a little bit. Mm-hmm. So if you're like, let's take Xavier versus Magneto, okay? So like, I'll just go in that universe. So with, like, Xavier sounds like kind of a punk. But if you're trying to make Xavier look good, then you make Magneto like kill babies or something like that, right? So then even if all the arguments that Magneto makes are legit, everything that he's saying makes sense, his plan makes sense, but his behavior is selfish, misogynistic, or, you know, any other kind of horror, then it discredits the actual validity of the arguments. And I feel like that's what they did in the movie. They said, okay, he wants to do this, he wants to do that, and you're like, yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I totally agree with that. But then they're like, oh, but we're going to make you do all these other, like, individually, like, behavioral things that are super fucked up and unexcusable. So then you make the audience have to choose. Are you going to just, like, hand wave his terrible behaviors? or are you going to only focus on his terrible behaviors, or what are you going to do? Like, I feel like that's what they did. I don't know if you guys have seen blaxploitation movies like Superfly or any of those movies like that, but a lot of those movies had people who posed themselves as revolutionaries who were actually hustlers or hypocritical in some sort of a way. Mm-hmm. And in those movies, they undermine the actual revolutionary message, while in reality, you know, the police departments all over the country were killing Panthers and incarcerating them. Right. And so it was a device to say, I'm not your brother, you know, whatever. Mm-hmm. Or like, yeah, we're trying to do stuff for the people, but like in reality, we're like hustling people in order to actually undermine that political message. And I feel like that's what they did in Black Panther.
The Killmonger character also, I mean, I think about from the real life experience of seeing Native people who have enlisted and became pawns of the U.S. military industrial complex. It's kind of hard to view him properly through a lens as a revolutionary when he basically submitted himself to kill for the United States. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also a strange task to have gone, or, you know, that they want to make the claim for him to have gotten where he was. I mean, and maybe, I guess if that's part of the argument, to leave him so conflicted and make him the bad guy, while he was actually in the service for almost his entire adult life in the service of the United States military. I mean, that to me, there's a conflicting story there that doesn't quite make sense. It seems to me a revolutionary is not the one who slips on the U.S. uniform and starts, you know, marking every death that he performs for them.
That's not totally true. Like, there were people, for example, in real life, who were veterans of the Vietnam War, who joined the Black Panther Party and trained them in arms, weapons, and military tactics. So, like, for example, in Los Angeles, there was a shootout at 41st and Central at the Southern California chapter's headquarters. There was a 4-hour shootout between the LAPD and the newly formed Special Weapons and Tactics, the SWAT team. SWAT team was formed specifically against the LA chapter of the Black Panthers, by the way. But they got the jump on them. They knew they were coming, and so they fortified the headquarters with sandbags. They were heavily armed, and no one died. They returned fire between the police and them for 4 hours, and no one died. And that's and the night before that, Fred Hampton was murdered. Mm-hmm. So the only reason why that they were able to do that was because there was a veteran. I forget his name. He's famous too. It's not Rap. It's not H-Rap Brown, but it's another famous Panther who was in the military, who already knew how to fortify things and trained them into doing it. So it's not impossible. And if you think about other revolutions, the Russian Revolution, Cuban Revolution, a lot of those people who were in the military got won over and used their military knowledge and weapons to fight against their former government. So I don't think that's impossible. I don't think that that's actually impossible.
But that's in reverse. Again, I think John was kind of saying your mindset going into joining the military versus, coming out of it. Because like you said, Julia, you can come out of it and, help us. And
it reminded me of, I don't know if you've listened to Solange's album, A Seat at the Table. Like, Master P has a lot of, just vocal overlays throughout that whole album, and he talks about, Master P is, a big rapper here in the South, and he did a lot of incredible things for music as an independent artist. So I've always kind of found him to be oddly regal. But he was talking about how his grandfather, what convinced him to start his own rap company was that his grandfather had been in the military, and he used to always hear his grandfather say, man, those people aren't going to do anything for us, we have to start our own stuff, that's not the way. And it just reminded me, and also Killmonger's character reminded me how a lot of Black and Indigenous people do end up having to join the military, if not just for I want to go to college. you know, just to make sure that they have something to eat every day.
I'm not trying to at all gloss over like the imperialist horror that people commit in the military. Right? Like that's not what I'm just saying that there is precedence of people being in the military, joining the military, somehow surviving and doing all kinds of horrible stuff, but when they come out, joining revolutionary struggles. There's another person, Robert F. Williams, who wrote Negroes with Guns, if people are familiar with that. He was the president of the Monroe chapter in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, the Klan comes, okay? I think he was in the Korean War. And so what did he do? He armed the NAACP chapter and fought the Klan. So, like, I'm just saying that there's, like, precedence of that. I'm not trying to excuse Killmonger. His name is in Jakarta, right? Isn't that his real name? They call him Eric Killmonger, but his like comic name is his actual name is like.
I was not familiar with any of like the comic books at all. Like I had never like read so like I went into this like totally fresh, like not knowing really anything about any of these characters.
Me too. My sister just is like has all the books and she's like read them, you have to read them, you know. So I've learned a little bit.
I will probably actually go back and read the comics now because now I am interested. But I wanted to go into the movie just like completely fresh and just see what my thoughts were basically.
But I guess one
of my other questions is what has been everybody's experience with the feedback from the film, because I know I've seen some terribly racist things posted on Facebook from white people that are just absolutely offended that this movie is not only that it was created, but that it's been successful. And are you guys seeing that as well?
Yeah. I have, but I mean those are just more tears for me to drink. Those are more tears for me to drink.
I heard about like them lying about like using white women who were abused for real, and like lying and saying that black people beat them up.
I don't know how angry you have to be over a film to lie about something like that, but wow.
I guess you'd have to be just as angry to like shoot up a school, right?
Yeah.
So, or too soon?
Yeah.
Another one's gonna happen tomorrow or next week, sadly. So
they're angry. They're really, 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 really mad. They're really mad. And like the one thing about also this movie that was incredibly interesting was that people dressed up in their African garbs and like. It was like going to Wakanda in some ways.
I was in my jeans.
Yeah, me too. Of course, represent. But like, and then here was something else that was kind of dope. So I saw this group of like Asian folks, and they had on their like really like these clean, nice like, I don't know how you describe them, but they look like Asian like outfits, but not just like regular ones. Like this one dude had this gold like dragon embroidered on his shirt. It was like the Asian delegation like went to Wakanda to like represent.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate it a lot. I was like, yeah, hell yeah, wear your shit. Like you didn't come in a dashiki, you came with like your people's like regal wear. It was like it was tight. It was really tight. I would like love it if other people from their own cultures like wore their clothes and were like, okay, we're here too, you know. Respect. It's a beautiful movie.
Wakanda to experience.
It's a beautiful movie. There's no question.
I saw like this funny meme where. You know that gif of like Rihanna like rolling up the window? So it's that at the bottom. It's her with that funny look on her face, and it's like the text is like South Africans like asking like Wakandans to help them with like apartheid, and then at the bottom she's like, hey, can you help us? And it's just Rihanna just rolling up the window.
Like, no. Oh right, because didn't the new like president say he was gonna like expropriate?
Oh, No, I didn't hear anything in real.
Because Zuma.
Oh right.
So Zuma resigned.
Right.
So my understanding is the new president said he was going to expropriate some of the wealthier white folks' land.
Oh.
I'll look into it more.
Okay.
I mean, who knows? Like, he could expropriate it. Is it for the people? Is it for himself? Is it for other wealthy black capitalists? Who's getting that land? Who's getting that money? But
I just need to know a little bit more about that.
Similar thing happened when Mugabe was out.
Yeah.
His replacement started saying, "Yeah, I think we need to give white people their land back." What?
What land? What land did they own?
I am confused by your statement. What did you say?
Remember that thing I told you about your ancestors needing to be like in the...
Right.
That's so good.
But yeah, I thought it was great. It was beautiful. The film was beautifully made. It had everything, right? It was like, except for it left out queerness, which we'll see. It's going to be a franchise movie. This is the last one. But it left out, in the comic, there's a lesbian couple of the women warriors.
Right.
And, like, that was, like, excluded from the film. But otherwise, it kind of checked off all the other things that were amazing. So it was a black cast and crew, and all the things that come along with that. And it was diasporic, and it was very female positive. And, she, like, uses the wig as a weapon and, like, all these other things. That
was a good moment.
That was the best. That was amazing. Like, yes, take it off, take off that wig. It was great. So it had all of those things. But, like, it also had those other things that we talked about. And, like, that concerns me because those are, like, morals that they're trying to, like, establish. One
of like the last things I had to say was just as much as I enjoyed the film, I don't consider this to be like the standard for Afrofuturism. Like in the next couple of decades, we're going to see like these incredible Afrofuturistic novels, TV shows, movies. Like the standard bearer for this genre like has yet to be seen.
Yeah,
so as much as I like,
it's the first one.
Yeah, so as much as I like the movie, it's like I just considered it like a very pleasant prologue.
Julia, you said something that really piqued my interest because I was at the doctor yesterday and they had Shamar Moore in Criminal Minds, and then I remembered he's also in a new show called SWAT, LAPD SWAT. And what you're saying about them being created simply to stop the Black Panthers in LA. So you have there's two creators of this show, SWAT. One of them is black, Aaron Rashawn Thomas, and the main stars are people of color, including the main star, Shamar Moore, who is a black man. So this, I guess, that would be the inverse of Black Panther, the 180, having black black actors, and yet still this huge piece of trash that is hurting our community.
I doubt either one of those people knows anything about the history of the LAPD. I sometimes think people give like actors especially way too much like credit on like how much they study or like understand the implications of certain roles that they take. I'm not saying that that's an excuse. I'm just saying.
Yeah, good point.
Artists.
I wonder if the directors or the writers.
Historians.
Yeah, I wonder about the writers because, like, if you Wikipedia the SWAT, Special Weapons and Tactics, it's not going to say, oh, this was created to quell the like Black Panthers. It'll say to deal with challenging social unrest. Like they're going to say, they don't phrase it that way. And so they'll probably know, yeah, this was the 60s, whatever. But it's a cop movie, cop show. Like Bright is like, and and that's the thing is that the what's it called? The ogre, I think he's an ogre or a troll. I don't remember what he's called. That person is white.
I skipped right because I loved Will Smith too much to see him go out like that.
Really? I don't love him that much, and then now I love him a little bit less because it was terrible. Yeah, it's not even. It's terrible. It's every white trope, white like guilt trope that you could find. Like you already know what happens in the movie. You already know how it goes. There's this person who's different than this person. Oh, ho, ho, it's actually black people that are racist. Ha, ha, you see? So it's like, yeah. Black people that are racist against the ogre.
We don't have to feel bad. Look at this. Black people do it too.
Yeah, because you're racist too, you see? It's that. He kills a fairy, and he's like, not all fairies' lives matter or something. Says some shit like that.
I did hear about that line.
Yeah, it's in the trailer. So no, because it's garbage. And of course, there's no black women that are in the film at all. The stripper. There's a stripper, and then one cop who has one line. So cop one, stripper one. Those are the black women in the movie. Yeah, it's total trash. I hate it. It reminds you of Crash. It reminds you of that, like we're all together in this melting pot. Like it has that. Don't even see it. It'll just piss you off. Not even with Will Smith. It'll just piss you off. This movie.
I was really interested in people's arguing that T'Challa represents more MLK, and then Killmonger is more like Malcolm X. Those conversations were interesting. Although I don't feel that Malcolm X would have gone about things quite the way Killmonger, really at all the way he does in terms of like military and stuff like that. But I thought those conversations were interesting as well.
John, you've brought up how Native people, when there's a movie about Native people, so often they're played by non-natives. I don't know if you're aware of a movie called Woman Walks Ahead, and the movie's about Sitting Bull, but somehow, through the magic of whiteness and white cinema, Jessica Chastain, she gets top billing, and the film is whitewashed, and it's white savior complex, PS, and the whole 9 yards. Have you heard of it or seen anything?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it. But that's usually what does happen. And again, as you guys talked about, there is this effort always to make a film marketable and profitable, and so trying to get it into a name that people are going to recognize, and that it has some sort of drawing power, box office drawing power. I get that for the most part, but at the same time, when you're doing some of these films where they're supposed to be representing some sort of historical accuracy, you realize that if you're going to do a film about Sitting Bull, that somehow Sitting Bull should be the main character, or Geronimo should be the main character, or whomever. But invariably, that's not the way. That's just not the way it plays out.
Do you know in Selma, they mentioned the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, also nicknamed SNCC, and Stokely Carmichael was ginormous with that organization. There is no SNCC without him, and he was there in Selma with Martin Luther King Jr. marching, and yet Stokely's not in the movie. And I'm just watching this movie dumbfounded. How is Stokely not in this movie? It's in the South. It's from the South.
There are always attempts to get rid of the more radical people. And that's part of like making things marketable as well, like making sure like the themes and the narratives appeal to as many people as possible. And so that's going to mean getting rid of the super blackity black folks. Usually.
I'm so shocked.
And then that also means limiting. That also means limiting like MLK's message to something about love.
Oh,
something banal like that.
I have two ideas of why a feature film like Malcolm X of Martin Luther King will never be made. One, from our side, we don't want to bring up that he was a man whore. And
who, Martin Luther King? That's definitely in the movie about him.
But they could have made that a lot worse. They held back.
That was definitely in that movie.
It was in it. I'm just saying they could have dragged that out a lot more.
What else did you need to see?
Well, him with women. It was just It was phone calls in the movie. That's all.
But you also see that it almost broke up his marriage, and then they tried to get him to commit suicide.
Well, and my other argument as to why is because of his more radical ideas, especially in the last part of his life. Anti-Vietnam, anti-capitalism, how the evils of white folks, the whole nine. That's why I don't think they will make a MLK feature film. Let alone they haven't made a Frederick Douglass feature film. They haven't made an Angela Davis.
I think that we're actually going to see all of those movies. I don't know how good they'll be. I don't know how good they'll be. I don't know how radical they'll be. I don't know anything like that. But I actually do. I do feel that we will see most of these people. Maybe not in a movie, because I don't think that everybody needs a movie.
I
think that there's different.
You keep saying they will make those films or they won't. I think the question is, on any of these people or these topics, will we? I mean, will our own people make these films? And I think that's where it's got to come back to.
I think, so of course there's an issue of funding and distribution and all these other things. So there's lots of movies that are made, but not all of them are seen by many people, right? So there's this kind of larger entity or complex that makes different films. For example, one of the Black Panthers that I work with, he's made a documentary and it's won a bunch of awards now. And it's called Jackson, Not Just a Name. And it's about this group called the Jonathan Jackson Educational Cadre. So in the the Avalon Gardens housing projects in South Central LA, after Jonathan Jackson was murdered, when he tried to break his brother out of the Marin County Courthouse and took some judges hostage, they murdered the judges. The state murdered the judges. They murdered the hostages. They murdered Jonathan too. Anyway, after that happened, this guy, Harold Welton, who was a Black Panther, he formed this grouping in the project. And what it was martial arts classes, education, different programs that they started there. And when they formed it, the newly formed Crips were coming in and trying to undermine them, along with the Los Angeles Police Department. The police department was not only assisting and encouraging that, but they were also looking the other way when these newly formed gangs had started to, basically terrorize the neighborhood. And they tried to broker peace with them, and they did in the beginning, but it obviously what happened. So I'm telling, and then there's another documentary called 41st and Central that's been made about the shootout that I told y'all about. So these movies are existing, but who knows about them, right? Mm-hmm. And if there is a movie that's made about more, the Malcolm X movie was really good in a lot of ways. It had some shortcomings, but it also was very New York centered. People don't know that Malcolm X spent a ton of time in Los Angeles, a lot of time organizing in LA, in Compton, in Watts. But that's fine. It was only East Coast because I guess we had beef still. So so fine, Spike. But the movies that are going to be made are going to be similar to Black Panther, which will be very socially progressive. All the ticks will be checked. Very socially Black. So in all forms, very, very Black. They'll have a Black cast, Black caterers, Black music, Black staff. But the politics will be reformist. The politics will be within the system. And like that's what I think is going to happen, is that you'll see more movies, more television, more things that are inclusive of black people, but will still have politics that will in some way or another defend white supremacy. And like that's my prediction, is like you'll have cornbread and collard greens and it'll all be delicious at the UN. So it's like, well, great. They'll serve kente cloth on napkins. You know, they'll have all the trappings, but the reality of substance will be the same.
I think that there will be a lot of films like that. I do think that they're just good writers, and I could actually think of several just little things that they could have changed even within this movie that would have made it outside the system. Mainly changes to like what happens to the CIA guy, and then just little things like that. I don't even know why they had that character in the movie. I wouldn't have even, if you had to have a white character. I do think that there will. I don't know. I feel like the unexpected is to be expected, and we will be pleasantly surprised. But I don't expect every piece of art to be revolutionary. And I also think that it can be sometimes of a misnomer to like necessarily look at like feature films and like expect some kind of roadmap. Like they can get conversations started, but it's like on us to like organize and to like, if it is overstating something, if it is sending out an idea that we don't like, it's on us to correct that.
There's one exception to that, A Birth of a Nation at the beginning of the 20th century. That set something in motion. Anybody remembers the Klan and the movie that Woodrow Wilson showed at the White House, and the Klan membership just skyrocketed. Of course, everything's different for white folks, but you talk about historical films. Looking at how whitewashed most historical films are, especially when you talk about American history, Black history, Native history, and I'll ask John this, him being one of the original people of this land, how harmful and dangerous are films like Lincoln, J. Edgar, to not only our own minds as Black and Native people and people of color, but to the white American populace?
Sally Hemings.
Oh yeah, Jefferson and the play Thomas and Sally up north, and there was a movie with Nick Nolte and Thandie Newton, Jefferson in Paris as well.
I think they're only as dangerous as much as you allow those things to be your child's only education in American history. So if you are just the type of person who doesn't like necessarily read or have access to sources that can actually give you genuine history, genuine perspectives, then they are very dangerous. If you do have access and a grounding in those things, you can watch those films and just take them as films.
But my point, I don't think the point is about us as individuals. The point is that the entire American populace does not have access to a lot of things. That's why they make these films. That's why they make the narratives the way they do. Right. For us, they could give a shit about us. Like, they already know we don't care and we know what the truth is. Like, people like us. But, like, other folks, you know, they make that so that those perspectives can be repeated. You'll see it. I really don't want to give it away. But the ending of Black Panther is like, that's the solution?
Right.
Besides the other part. That's it? Well, that's what you're saying? That's what we need? Like, they're trying to tell a story. They're trying to push a line. And it doesn't mean that everyone's going to go for it. Reality always sets in. Trump probably politicized way more people than, like, most of the revolutionaries I know. Because you can't, like, look away from food stamps getting cut. You can't look away from healthcare being cut. That's just very obvious to people. And, like, you don't have to have a manifesto to make it clear that the wealthy are getting wealthier and the poor are getting poorer. So,
but to Nolan's question, I think it is dangerous when films are depicted as historical, biographies or whatever, and that they leave out major, points. I mean, the Lincoln film with Daniel Day-Lewis, for instance, that time frame of, and I've never even seen the film, but that time frame that Lincoln is portrayed in that film is the exact time that he, put himself into, and of course ultimately would have had to sign the execution order, but put himself into the process of executing 38 Dakota in Mankato, Minnesota. And to me, I mean, if you were to do a film that was supposed to depict the complexity of a character, how would that have not added to the film? Right. I mean, it shouldn't have been a film about necessarily heroizing or villainizing, but really talking about the struggles of a man being in that office. But he literally asked for the transcripts from this military trial that tried over 300 Native people in a little over a week, found them all guilty, sentenced them all to death, and when he asked them to trim the number down, and they didn't know a formula for doing so, he literally trimmed the number down himself to 38 from over 300. Not that the rest of them got off, but how is that not noteworthy in telling history? It's kind of, and then you get into things like Disney and Pocahontas. I mean, the whole myth that Pocahontas and John Smith even had a relationship was made up by John Smith many years after the death of Pocahontas, because he never even mentioned her in any of his journals that he wrote at his time in Jamestown. So the whole thing mischaracterizes all of this stuff, and it not only presents a false narrative, but it also mischaracterizes the entire history. I mean, there was a calendar that was recently put out by one of these police associations that honoring their fallen, heroes or whatever else. It lists one of the cops from Standing Rock, who's credited with being the one who fired the shot to kill Sitting Bull, who was unarmed at the time, and they're honoring him, and that's the way history will portray this stuff. That somehow Sitting Bull was shot in an armed conflict. Well, he wasn't armed. They came to arrest him because they thought that he was somehow behind the ghost dance that Wovoka and others were doing. I mean, so none of the history gets told properly, and so in the process, you continue to cast Native people or Black people in a light that only is going to somehow make people worry about how angry we are, not how right we might be.
Agreed. But I do also think that that's a reason that we have to either garner the resources, we have to fund and write our own stuff. And then we have to raise kids and artists who have a historical founding in the truth, and then who want to create art that does that. That's like I feel like it's like a multi-generational project that we just have to commit ourselves to, because they're never going to tell them. They have no reason to tell them socially, politically, economically. We just have to. Yeah. We have to do it.
Yeah, I think that's true. If we just made a worldwide, revolution of working class people and oppressed people, we wouldn't have any of these other problems. I'm just saying. But in the meantime, but I think that the people who have the money, their narrative gets put out there more, right? And
Absolutely.
and that's the way there's no way they're going to put out something that makes them that questions their legitimacy.
Right.
Maybe they'll question one person's legitimacy.
Right.
So one person's fucked up, right? We'll do an expose of one person, but they won't write anything that questions the entire legitimacy of capitalism. They're not going to do it. They're not going to write something that undermines them. So
wait
you're right.
40 years.
They'll wait, and then maybe they'll say something "Oh, remember how we were saying Snowfall? Right. Oh yeah, crack it." And they said everybody who was saying that, "You're nuts. The CIA would never put drugs in the community. Keep talking about it. That's a conspiracy theory." Now there's a show about it, so they'll do it after
about it.
Yeah, after the death. Everybody's dead. All these people are dead. All these people are locked up. Then all these people's whole families have been devastated, and then they'll make something about it. So yeah, they will do that. But I think when things like this come out, we should try to take advantage of that to talk about other realities, the reality.
Yep.
Like I made a poster for the Black Panther political prisoners because they're still alive, right? Mm-hmm. There's people that are still alive that did things that are like more incredible than like a fake movie superhero did. They broke people out of jail. They robbed banks. Not only did they do that, the people who got caught from those things. So like Assata Shakur, they break her out of prison. But Mutulu Shakur, who was her partner, no, not her partner, her brother or something, Tupac's stepfather, he's still locked up for 40 years, right? And he's been in jail for 40 years, and he hasn't snitched. He hasn't sold anyone out. Like, what kind of heroism is it to be locked up? Mm-hmm. What kind? Like, every day, you can make one split decision that's heroic in a moment, right? Where you're like, I'm going to decide to sacrifice myself. And you do it in a moment, and that's all good, and credit to people who do that. But to make that same heroic decision for decades, every single day, and getting your ass beat, all the kind of repression that people face, that's some superhero shit. It
is. Amen.
So
I felt that.
I feel it really hard. Like, you're holding it down for 40 years, okay? In solitary.
When I hear people, like, criticize, like, Nelson Mandela, and I'm not saying that he's above criticism, I don't know. I just always respect people more when they've, like, been to prison and, like, had to deal with a lot of stuff that, I don't know, a lot of people who just run their mouth and criticize people for certainly aren't dealing with.
But, you know, I mean, hey, we got to tell the truth, right? When you're a political person, you have to tell the whole truth. Positives, negatives, you got to say the whole thing. But yeah, that's right. And that's a lot of the other people like that, too. So I was like, well, put money on their books. Write to them. Right. Say something to them. Like, don't let them believe that they're just a poster. The Black Panthers aren't a poster. They're real people. Right. You know?
Someone used to tell Michael B. Jordan that was a little thoughtless.
Oh, his photo shoot.
Photo, yeah.
I hated that.
I'm sure those photo shoots are like directed by the who did this film? Disney? Is it Disney?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's a shame.
I'm sure that those are contractually obligated events. Like, you will.
Yeah. You didn't recognize the classless monarchy. Yeah. Everybody's happy, but we've got a king and queen.
More propaganda.
That's what that is. Like, but we're all happy. In Wakanda, some of us have pretty gowns, and some of us live on floor huts. And it's all great.
There was even, like, the idea of having a king. I was reading, I'll have to find the text. If I find the link, I'll throw it up. But it was talking about how, just in certain places in Africa where there were kings and queendoms, how it was describing this one individual, and he was talking about how his daily routine was basically just to ride on his horse all day and, like, help his people, like, mediate between, like, different disputes that they were having. So even they could have added more service to his kingship. I felt, I don't know. It felt a little bit more imperious than it would have been in reality.
There's talk of a Mansa Musa movie would be absolutely huge.
I would like it. I would go see that.
I camp out.
Well, let me know who the director is first, and then
sure.
I'll make that. Yeah.
Yeah, Nate Parker.
No.
That's
no, it's not.
No.
Rose.
He had one job.
He's gross, dude.
He is gross, and I didn't like how he was giving interviews and, like, was so unapologetic and was just, like, acting like he just did not understand why people kept breaking up this rape thing. Well, I don't think that's what he was convicted of. I think he was convicted of something that sounded suspiciously like it would have been called rape if he had been charged with it today. But I forget what the...
Oh, no, it wasn't that. It was that the person the victim pressed charges against both of them, him and the producer. Okay, and he was not convicted, but the producer of his film was.
Okay.
So, and that's his homie, and they stayed homies throughout college.
And he worked, and didn't that guy work on that movie, A Birth of a Nation?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So it's like, okay, so you weren't convicted, but like this other dude was, who you were friends with when it happened, and you're still friends with him, and now he's working on the movie.
That's really creepy.
And then she killed herself.
Right.
She killed herself.
See, and that's a tell. When I read like or see like male artists' work, and it's like it always has a rape scene or like there's something like that. I like George R.R. Martin. I feel like he has like I feel like he has like a thing with incest because like that is just all throughout his books and like Game of Thrones. Like I don't know, it's wrong to attribute things necessarily to like directly how an artist feels, but I don't know. That just creeps me out when I see just like repeated things like that. Like it's all of your work.
It's like a tell. You're like, what's going on? Like, why are you putting this here? I mean,
why are you so
there should be. It's not to say that discussion shouldn't happen. It has to be there. Actually, one thing that I haven't seen that I would want to see in movies that discuss slavery. I'm not against more movies about slavery. Please, there needs to be more. There's not enough to discuss that. But one thing that isn't discussed is queerness and trans people enslaved, because you don't really have a choice about who you're going to be with. You don't choose who you sleep with. They decide. You don't choose. You may try to choose who you want to partner with, but then they could just sell your family somewhere else, especially if it's a bargaining chip to make you do something.
I have several.
And so then what about people who...
I was just going to say I have... Go on, finish.
So then, like, what about people who are lesbian and gay and trans and queer and bi? What about those people? There obviously had to be during slavery. So, like, where are those stories? It isn't even like discussed in even enslaved movies. You know, that people who are enslaved can have their own like desires and love, and like that is like taken away in that way. So
I have several pieces of research I was going to say about the sexual abuse of black men during slavery, which I feel is something that needs to be explored more too. I have several pieces of research that discuss like there are people giving account of different slaves that they've met, and several people throughout time talk about how there is rarely a light-skinned black man that they have known that was not forced to have sexual relations with his white mistress or women in her social circle. I'd be very, very interested in things that explore that dynamic.
All these stories need to be told. I think one more for sure is how Native people were ahead of the curve by far. One, recognizing that there's more than two genders, and there's you know, straight, queer, bi, gay, etc., and respecting those people.
We also had those people within our societies, whether people want to admit that or not.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Every society.
To take nothing away from.
Need to be told.
Yeah.
And I bring the Native thing up because that.
You should. It's important.
Yeah, definitely.
You have to every movie about Native genocide. There's like 4,500 million slave movies.
There are not that many slave movies. Man.
I'm just saying by comparison.
45 million. What?
The rest seems
Where are they?
That seems like that's the ratio, at least by comparison, not in total number. It's just where's the movie about Wounded Knee 1 or 2?
That depicts white people massacring people. Like that is not a good sell for a white audience.
Slavery's not a fun movie.
But that's in that situation they get to pretend to be that one person. Like they get to be the good guy. They get to be that person who would have helped someone escape. There's not necessarily that role to play in the other thing.
Well, John, what are your thoughts on that particular subject?
Well, I mean, obviously, if you can look at many films throughout Hollywood's history that do depict black people in servitude in one way or the other. Of course, they try to make it like the happy house servants kind of thing, but I mean, which misrepresents it all. But no, clearly, when you look at how stereotypically Native people, when they are portrayed, they're always portrayed in the most negative way or the most primitive way. I mean, even in this latest film, Hostiles, it's like you've got Native people who can't speak English, but you've got white people who can speak whatever, Shawnee or whatever they were speaking. It's like, so the white people can learn how to speak in the Native tongue, but the Native people can't.
Exactly. That's right, because the white people are progressive, you see. They bother to learn your language, you see. But you didn't bother to learn theirs. Yeah. Yep.
And see, they don't even know. They don't even know that I mean, it's not even acknowledged by them that in of itself is racist. And and that's what I find so remarkable about so much of this is that when you look at the oversight and look, there's no question about it that it affects all people of color. But part of the thing is that we are such a small market. We're just a small population, such a marginalized people in terms of marginalized by the telling of history, marginalized in terms of population. I mean, think about it. I mean, there are more Haitian immigrants and refugees in the United States than there are Native people who survived the genocide. I mean, that's pretty incredible. I mean, there are more Puerto Ricans. There are more people who identify themselves as Puerto Ricans than there are the entire rest of the Native population in the United States. That's pretty remarkable. I don't even know why that is, to be honest with you, other than some of the obvious. I mean,
genocide. Continuous genocide.
I mean, but that's pretty remarkable when you put. So I mean, it's really easy. So when Barack Obama says that if he owned an NFL franchise and that NFL franchise had a name that offended a significant number of people, he'd think about changing it. I mean, I don't know how many hypotheticals you can put in one sentence, but when he says that, what it really translates down to is a numbers game. For one thing, we as a Native population, we aren't a significant number of people in the overall scheme of things, not when you compare us to white people or the rest of the American population. So when Barack Obama says that, isn't that great? Barack Obama says that Redskins should change their name. No, that's not what he said. I mean, and I got into an argument with Susan Harjo, who was supposed to be one of these champions of native rights, because she wanted to make it sound like Barack Obama had said something much more definitive in terms of his condemnation of that name. But he said, if I own a team and if that team's name offended a significant number of people. But, I mean, so, it always comes down from a Native perspective to a number game. And the thing about Native people also is that we don't represent, even to the extent that we do have a population, we're usually spread out in the very most rural areas and secluded areas of the country. We aren't a major. There might be 100,000 Native people in all of New York City, in the whole metropolitan area. That's a pretty small population, if you overall scheme of things.
And that's why we as Black people, just a word to any Black people who might be, if you know Native artists, if you know Native historians, or just people you think are talking about, really interesting things, try to retweet, share. Don't talk over people as much. But that's one of the ways in which I feel that we as Black people can be of assistance to our Native allies.
Absolutely. Our stories are very, very similar, and they have, there's so many common threads between us that, but again, sometimes it's really hard because at the end of the day, most Native people are not fighting for their rights as Americans. We're fighting for our rights not to do that. And that's where the line sometimes gets a little bit, blurry or fuzzy. I mean, I don't not stand for the American flag because I want America to represent those ideals. I won't stand for that flag because it's not my flag. So that's a little bit different thing, you know.
Black people, let me tell you, a lot of black people feel the exact same way. We just don't know what to do about those feelings.
I hear you.
Honestly.
I hear you.
Will to survive and not sure how to do it exactly.
That's a conversation for that's a whole nother a show topic.
Yeah, that's
a series. That's a 12-part series.
Morgan Freeman's voice. Where are you? Not your politics.
Oh. Yeah, I'm not really into Morgan Freeman that much. I watched one of those Inside the Actors Studios. You know, you got to be really careful when you watch them because then when you really get to know who those people are, you don't necessarily like them after you watch it. And he was one of them. I was like, I don't really like you that much anymore after I watched who you are.
I've had some people share that quote with me where he's justifying something, and I don't give a damn about something silly like that just because Morgan Freeman was the person who happened to say it.
Yeah.
It's still
and he went to LA City College. I mean, I was like,
how do you stop
college,
racism?
brother. Good for you.
Stop talking about it.
How about we just stop
don't talk about
interviews?
It. That's the problem.
How about we stop Morgan Freeman from interviews? Giving
that.
Because that's the problem with
One of the latest things I heard him say was that the United States for 200 years has represented the epitome of democracy, and I'm thinking, really, what about that first 100 years? I mean,
or the last 100, the last 10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, put Morgan Freeman down for re-education.
The drop squad. We're calling the drop squad on him.
Derrick, how many shows are you trying to make here? Because that right there has, we got a long list.
You're gonna be sent to the re-education camp. No, I'm just kidding.
Because that's his niche. His niche is like being a stoic black man to white people.
Right.
That's his niche.
Getting out of
stoic
prison
black man.
Help Tim Robbins.
Glory. Right. Stoic.
Yeah.
I actually a lot of elite blacks do take on that attitude, though. It's just like, if you just acted like this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, even Denzel. I'm like, dude, shut up. Just shut up, Denzel. Shut up. How could you play Malcolm X and, like, not inculcate, like, what he actually was saying?
Celebrities are not hypnotists.
They're not necessarily, right? And, I mean, to me, it's like your politics are your politics. So, hey, Sarah Silverman came out from Ahed Tamimi. Good job. Good job. Good job for that. Free Palestine. All about that.
She's also belittled the plight of Haitians on her show. She also interviewed good friend Al Franken on her new Hulu show. She endorsed Hillary.
Is a person that I ignore like 99% of the things.
And that's what she should do with someone like her.
Except for but when she came out for Palestine, it was like, okay, you know, like she could have.
Oh, did she do that?
Been quiet.
Well,
did she do that?
I remember that.
50 points. Plus
but
50 points. Now she's still trash. You were still at a trash score, but plus 50 points.
Well,
she did it. She did it. And she's Jewish, and she freaking did it. And she probably had a lot of pressure from other people, and she went out and supported. She was like, yeah. And she went out and she said, what's her name? Ahed Tamimi? You know, the one who, the blonde Palestinian girl who's been doing this shit since she was like 2.
Okay.
Her, she came out in support of her, and she condemned Israel.
But she's also come out on national television to support Hillary Clinton, who has been helping Israel.
Look, we're not
I'm not trying to like represent her totality. I'm just saying that she did that thing.
Yeah.
She did a cool thing.
She did a cool thing. Okay. Yeah. Like, I'm not trying. There's no celebrity worship for me. It's just somebody does something. You're like, oh, okay. That was great. I'm surprised.
It's one thing if she could apologize for past anti-Palestine racism and came to this, but me looking in the past.
I don't know.
Anyway, okay, I don't really give a shit about her enough. We don't have to talk about her enough. I really don't give a shit about her as a person enough to be like, I just know it's bad thing. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not invested. I'm not invested.
I think that's a good way to end this week's panel by closing the door to Sarah Silverman's.
But I do want to open the door to Blackstone, okay?
Blackstone.
Cannot talk about Native representation and folks wanting Native representation, and then I'm telling you this show is all of that, and it's everything.
Okay, how about this?
I'll try to check it out. For me, but here's the one thing I got to tell you. One of the problems that we have on Native territories is we don't even have internet. So even trying to do some stuff on Netflix is.
I know y'all have internet because I'm talking to you. I know you have internet, but
I'm just saying cell phone here, and it's difficult. I do, literally my internet here is one of those little Wi-Fi devices, and that's what I use. I use it, and that's how I do it. But it's like you got to limit yourself on what you're gonna check it. But I will definitely check out Blackstone. And
let's all try to watch at least one episode. Everybody just come back next week, and maybe we can make that a topic about.
Can we also at some time talk about maybe with John if there's anything that we can do to help with that situation or get more access to internet, and people in the rural areas here also need that, but if there was anything that I could do to support that or move that along, I'd be really interested.
Yeah, no, I think it is a conversation. You know what? I think part of the conversation is not just about laying fiber. It's understanding, what technology is really applicable that isn't about trying to rape casino tribes for money. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of solutions to some of this stuff, but a lot of times it's difficult to even get a small startup that's willing to take on some of these challenges. I mean, I know there was all kinds of solutions that were being thrown around about solving problems with electric and internet in Haiti and in Puerto Rico. I don't know how much of that stuff really transpired, but getting communications back up, yet we still have major problems on. I'm near Buffalo. You'd think that we would have decent internet here, but we don't. We don't.
My relatives in rural Louisiana just got internet, within the last year.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Anyways, I enjoyed talking with all of you. I hope you all have a good evening.
Indeed. You have a good week. I'll see y'all soon, and everybody.
All right. Thanks for letting me join you guys.
Indeed. All right. Thank you. Good night, y'all. Enjoy Blackstone.
Right. I will.